Okay, guys. So, all right. So, thank you so much once again for joining. So, as we have learned in our last sections, like we have gone through how to work with the repositories and everything. Basically, if you see here, we within the organizations we have a projects, and the projects we will have a multiple repository created. But as of now, if you see here, I do not have any repo. You can see here because maybe I created recently for my testing. But anyway, say for example, I will just give you example. I mean, how it is come first. As I told you, whenever you basically, if you see here, this is your organizations. So first of all, this is your portal, right? As I told you yesterday, this is your dev.azure.com. This is nothing but your just like a Azure portal. While login to the Azure portal, what we do is that we simply type portal.azure.com, right? This is to log in your Azure portal. Same way, whenever you want to work with Azure DevOps service or Azure DevOps related any service, you would be needing to log in to dev.azure.com. Okay. So we have already logged in. While signing, as I mentioned, you can log in with your GitHub accounts or Azure portal. If you have accounts, you can also use as a login credentials with that. But in my case, I have already better to use a GitHub account as a you may need to create a GitHub account that you might be knowing how to do it. If you don't know, as I told last time also I have explained it. Try that. If not, I can help you also. Okay. So I have already logged in right now, and now you could see two different companies. Company one, that is a XY company, and then DevOps STG organizations. So let me go one of them. I will go with this one first. The reason why, because I have so many projects over here, so that I can explain easily. Fine. So under organizations, what we have a projects. If you see here, we have so many projects. If you just notice here, Agile projects and Azure DevOps Pulse project and Smart Hotel, there's so many projects we are having. Okay. So that means within the organizations, you can have many projects. Okay. Exactly, we don't know how many projects we can keep, but maybe if you Google it, you'll find up to how many projects in one organization we can keep. So let me keep this aside. So we can check there also how many projects we can keep in one organizations, right? We will get some idea. How many projects can be created in one organization, right? Organization in Azure DevOps, Azure DevOps. Even I don't know that, but we can check it. Oh my God. You can see that means up to we can have a 1000 projects. Okay. So that's good to know. Even I didn't know before, but we can have up to 1000 projects. Great. So that means, as I told you, you can have as many projects as you want. So up to 1000 projects you can have in one organization. Question is, what is organizations? It's basically based on the requirements. It is a kind of your based on your projects. You will have one any organization you can keep. I mean, you can give any organization name, so that within the organization you can have as many projects as you need. In our case, as part of the documents, it says 1000 projects we can have it. So if you see here, I have like 3-4 projects over here right now. So within each project, if I go, let's say I'll go inside this project. That means inside my organizations I have a multiple projects. If I go one of the projects that is called as Agile project, I could see something like this. That I could see what I see is here. If you go repo, if you just click here, I have so many repos here. Okay, these all repos. If you remember last time we have learned about Git, right? So similar way, we also have and also we have learned GitHub. This also just like a GitHub, it works. But what is the difference between GitHub and this Azure Repo? We will try to understand that later. But for now, just say this is also your kind of your repository where you can store your code, just like a GitHub. The difference here, I will tell you that what is the difference between the GitHub and this one. Okay, so understand this much now. Now, if I see here, I could see other like within this Azure DevOps under projects, I need to understand some of the things like what I call as service. I do have something called as a boards. If you see boards, then I have a repos, and I also have a pipelines, and I do also have a test plans, and then artifacts. Question is, are we really using these tools or maybe service? The answer is yes, it is used. First thing, Azure board. Why we used also, we yesterday we have already gone through, right, some of the topics like work items, boards, backlogs, springs, queries, delivery plan, everything. But you don't have to understand everything this, because this mostly will be done by the Scrum Master. But it is always good to understand in the high level, not into details. High level you can understand what Azure board means. What is repo? Repo mean basically mostly you as a DevOps engineer, your work would be focused on the repo, Azure pipelines, and test plan also. It is done by the QA, testing, test engineer. And artifact also, in some company they have their own what they call external, they have open source artifacts repository, they have it. If not, you can use this also as an artifacts. Don't worry if you don't understand what is artifacts. Anyway, we are going to come to that point. Okay, now let's go to the documents. Now anyway, I will cover this repo part later. I mean, let me check. Protection. Yeah, so let's see, understand the high level basically. As I told you yesterday that we do have a repo. So this is a repository, right? As I told you, I have shown you also, we do have Azure Repos, Azure Pipelines, Azure Boards, Artifacts, and Test Plans. Now, let me have water, sorry. So, yeah, so I was saying about Azure Repo, right? Azure Repo, if you see the definitions, right? What is Azure Repo? What is the main functionalities of Azure Repos now? It is also, if you see here, it is also a version control system. Okay, it is a version control system. Okay, and also that enables collaborative code developments and the management, just like a GitHub. Because if you remember GitHub also, what we do is we do change the code. I mean, first what we have it, let me show you instead of just explaining, so that it will be easy for you to follow. Say for example, this is my github.com. What did I say that time? GitHub is nothing but it is a cloud-based platform. Everything is managed by as a service, it is managed by cloud itself. So you do not manage any service over here. But then as a service, you are just using it this one. Okay. And what is the advantage of using this one? As I told you, as a developer, you will not do everything in your GUI mode, graphic this interface mode. Okay. So what you do, you will do a changes or whatever modification you want, you will do in your local systems. Let me show you there also. Mostly one of them we can use the IDE, that is the BS code. If it is developer, they'll use the other also BS code. We have 2022, 2019 like that they have it. But say for example, we are using this BS code as local, okay, locally. Now whatever changes I'm doing in this particular repository, it is only be stored locally. Now this same code, if you want to publish so that other team in your organizations or maybe different team, you want them to be basically reuse this repository, or maybe you want to share your code to remotely somebody, right? Because locally you cannot copy every single code and share to somebody over email. This does not work that way. So what we do to store all your code as a remote so that everybody can use with the help of GitHub. That is when with the help of GitHub, we can use this one, right? Say for example, I have multiple repo. If you go here repos, all my codes are stored here. Now, if I want to share one of the code to anybody, I can simply give this URL to them. Or maybe if you want to use, somebody wants to use, suppose I given this URL to somebody, they have obviously you need to give access to them. then say for example you given access to this particular, what they have to do, simply they will come here, they will click here, code base, they will simply authenticate, clone it in their local system, just like how I did here using git clone command. Simply what I do, I simply type a git clone and I will simply copy paste the URL, this URL, right? I'm not doing it just to show you like this. That means now other team or different person can also do same like how you're doing here, so that they can collaborate core, and if any changes is required or based on the requirement, they can also work on this particular requirement, right? This is the reason. And obviously apart from this, there is something called the pull request. Why pull request is required? Because as I mentioned, before checking or testing your code or maybe verifying your code, you cannot push your code directly to your main branch. Okay, suppose you have a main branch, every single code, this is your origin. If you see here, it is a default branch. So whenever you create any repository, whether it is in GitHub or maybe Azure Repo also, right? Depends on this thing. Sometimes you, instead of the main, it sometimes also a master also, you need to notice that one. But it will be master or main, one of them. But mostly it will be main only as a branch name, default branch name. Okay. Say for example, in our case, this is the branch now. Based on there, I will create new branch now. If I create new branch, what happen now? Whatever changes is there or maybe whatever codes available in this main branch, everything is going to be replicated in your new branch. Say for example, Git branch I created now. So whatever changes I have or maybe code is available in the main branch, same code will be replicated in your new branch called Git branch. So that now whatever changes you want, say for example, you are already working here, is here Git branch, I'm in a Git branch. Whatever changes I want now, I will simply, what I'll do, I'll simply write the code changes that I need for particular, not in the main branch, it is in my branch. That is, the reason is why do I not use the main branch? The answer is because if you use a main branch, yes, you can use it, it's no issue, but then it is not a best practice. If we at all had to use, there is a something called as a branching strategy, where we will understand in that point of time. Okay, for now, you just understand right now we are using the feature branch. Why we are using feature branch? Because whatever changes you are doing, if you're doing in the main branch, because the main branch code is running fine, everything's working fine. Suppose if you're doing any mistake or anything wrong in your branch, what happen? It may affect to your environment, right? Whatever the application is running or maybe the particular infrastructure is running, it may affect, right? This is the reason why you always need to create separate branch based on this thing. And as I already mentioned earlier or maybe in our last class, that whenever I create a new branch, I always need to give a slash and a branch name. The question is it compulsory? The answer is no. It is not required. If you don't want, you can leave. You can just give a Git branch as a branch name. But I have given as a feature branch because it is good for me to understand even for others also. What is the purpose of using this branch like that? Okay. But if you see, trust me, many of the organizations, you will see branch name will be created something like this, because this is the best practice you need to follow according to the projects, or not projects, basically according to the best practice. Okay, so I have this is clear now. Same way, if I talk about the Git also, it works. This also just like this thing. But question is now, if you see here, it is also version control that enables collaborative. That means you can collaborate code development and the management. So that means I do not see any difference between the Git and the Azure Repo and GitHub. But what is the difference then? Okay, now as I told you, Git and GitHub difference, Git works locally. This is a Git, basically you work locally everything. This is called a distributed version, open source distributed version control. That means you do not need any sort of internet connectivity, either you do not need any kind of this thing. You can work in your branch independently without having to worry about anything. But then same code, if you want to publish or maybe you want to share, because you cannot keep your code here always, right? Because system, let's say your system get corrupted or anything happens, then how are you going to recover your code, right? Or maybe applications code, whatever. So that is the reason why you need somewhere where you can store your code as a remote location. Say for example, for any reason something happened to this system also, it's not affect to your code. And also not just that, and also you can share your code with your team like your team members or maybe different person. And also at the same time, as I told you, you can also have a pull request. Pull request YB1 before merging to the main branch, you can basically review, you can get reviewed by somebody. Say for example, you're working as a DevOps engineer, there is some other senior people are there in your team. You have to make sure that they review your code first before merging to your main branch. Anyway, this we will learn everything in details real time as we learn. For now, just understand this much. Okay. Now, then let us understand the difference between the Azure Repo versus the GitHub. Okay. Now, if you see the GitHub, as I told you, this is a repo, right? Definition wise, almost same. Collaboration we can do and everything. But the only the difference, what is first thing? This particular Azure Repo, it is integrated within your Azure DevOps project or within Azure DevOps. That means this is managed via Azure DevOps. If you see here, dev.azure.com, right? So this particular Azure repos or repos is basically integrated within your DevOps only. That means you do not manage this independently. Okay. So whenever you create a project and the projects by default, you get everything as part of the this particular services, because as I mentioned, these are all integrated within the Azure repos. I mean Azure DevOps. But when comes to this particular this thing, as you can see here, the name suggests, right? This is basically you need to log in to another URL, right? If you see here, this is another URL where that means this particular is a cloud base. Now you can imagine that means if you want to use, you can use this also as a source code. And if you want to use this also, I can use it. But question is which one is the good one, or how do I know which is to be used, right? In your actual company. Okay. So you need to understand some of the, you need to understand some of the like high level of what you call that benefits or maybe advantage or disadvantage of using it, one of them, right? Okay. First thing, as I mentioned, this particular Azure repo is used because it is already integrated. That means you do not need any additional authentications. First thing, you simply create new repo, store your code here or modify your code. You can same code, you can clone it in your local systems. Local system clone the code just like how we did in GitHub, and you modify it and you push to the Azure repo. That's it. And what is the second advantage is that, as I told you, you don't need any authentications, and it will be much easier for you to manage it because it is in one location, in one place, everything one place, right? Say for example, you have a Azure repos in one place, you have a, you can run your pipeline also in the same within your Azure DevOps, and you have a test plans, we have a artifacts, we have a dashboard, we have everything. So that means as a service, we have a set of service which is already integrated as part of your DevOps. So this is why people prefer to use it. And second thing is security. If you think about this one, I can use, I don't have any issue. As a source code, I can use this also. But the problem is I need to authenticate to my GitHub. Say for example, in your GitHub account now, somebody has access, or maybe you need to give explicitly access to a certain person, right? It is quite is difficult for you to manage it. Say for example, something your password or your anything got compromised, then what happens? It will be a big risk because all your applications core is already resides in your repository. So it will be a biggest risk for you to basically work with this particular this thing. This is the reason why always many of the company they prefer to use instead of the GitHub, they use this thing. But question is then when do I use this one GitHub then? Yes, GitHub also can be used. Say for example, you are working in different projects now. Say for example, I have a multiple repos here. Okay, I have multiple repos here. Now, in one of the repo, let's say I'll make as simple so that it will be easy. Which one? Okay, I can take anything. Okay, say for example, this one Azure DevOps Pal is a repository name. This repository stores some. This is basically created by different team now in the same organizations, right? Or maybe some developer has built this code. Ignore for now. I don't have anything. Just understand the concept. That's it. Okay. Say for example, somebody or as a developer has built this code, and it is stored in the GitHub. Normally, nobody will store your code directly in your Azure Repo. Azure Repo will be only stored when you have the what do you call organizations and projects are created. Before creating the Azure organizations and the projects, you do not have any option to choose to keep your repositories as simple. But let's say, as I told you, as a developer, first you need to build the code, you need to test the code, everything need to be done, right? So, and also you do not know which project to keep and everything. Let's say say for example, you're working for the client, your work is to create the code and keep everything ready and send it to the client so that they can use it. In this case, you can use it. Or maybe you have a different team within the same organizations. They also, as part of the policy, you can share the same code to them for the same purpose. In this case, also, we can write your code locally and post to the remote and give the access to the respective person or organizations, and they can clone same code to your repository. Say for example, as I told you, this is the repository which was created by some other person within the same organizations. Now, I want this particular code to be available as part of this particular what do you call Azure DevOps pipeline. Sorry, Azure DevOps repo. Because I told you this service and that service are different. So how can I do that one? I want to bring the changes in the sense whatever I have here. I think I will take this one. Okay, I will clone this one in the same code. What I want is I will click simply here. Okay, there is an option. Okay, there is an option. What I want is I first want to clone this one to my basically bring the changes or maybe repository in my local Azure DevOps portal in my repos. So how can I do that? You simply go to the repos, and if you see here that under here, as I told you, first organizations, then projects, and then we have it under projects we have a different services. Now, if you see here, this is actually by default. Some of the resources are some by default. Okay, it will be created as on when you create any projects by default there will be one repo like empty projects will be created for you projects this thing. Now let me show you. If you see here, can you see as this thing Agile project? If you see, this is the organizations, then this is the project name. Same under this one with the same logo of the repo, you will see this one, right? Agile project 01. Same thing you can. This is the project name. This is the repo's name. That means, as I told you, whenever you create for the first time any repo you create, I mean any organizations you create under organization, if you create any project under project with the same project name, you will be created one default repository that is with the same project's name. I hope this is clear. Okay. Now we don't have much anything here, but yes, it can work if you want to do it. So now, okay, let me bring the changes what I have, because if you can see there is a new repo. That means within the same Azure repos also, if you want to modify here or maybe write the code from scratch, just like how we did in the VS Code, same way also you can create new repos also from here from scratch. Just like in Azure, I mean in GitHub, how we create a new repos, right? Same way we created here. I mean we can create it. Now, let me go to the next one, that is the import. Import is nothing but as name suggests. Say for example, you have any other repository which you want to import to your particular Azure DevOps repository. So in this case, you can use this one. So let me create this one. I will show you this also so that you get to know exactly everything. Okay, now I can give any name that I would like to give. Okay, say for example, test repos, anything you can give any name, not an issue. Test repo, okay. Here I can define readme. If you remember when I create the GitHub also, I could see the .ignore then admin file, right? So let me show you once again, because there are some people they don't, maybe they have not seen. So I'll show you. Let's say example, this is in GitHub. If I had tried to create new repository, on the repository, new. Now under new, if I create, if you see here, I can give a some test repo, something like that, right? Now, if you see here, this can be public or private, anything. Now, if you notice, this is what I was telling. We have a readme file, and then we have a .ignore file, same license, everything we can see. Same way, even when you create here also, you get to see here, you see here, right? You can select whether you want .ignore or not, or maybe if you can give if you want .ignore file, maybe readme also if you want, you can just tick this one. Okay, so I will create now. As soon as I create, see this will be the empty repository for you now. What you can do is now you can simply go here. This is a created, right? So you can follow the steps basically to create this thing. You can basically create new setup. You can, okay, you can do it. Suppose I want to do it a new one. I mean, I want to import from the GitHub. Let me show you. See, as soon as I create, like I want to bring the changes, this particular repo which I have it, right? DevOps Pulse repo. I want to import this one to my Azure Azure DevOps, right? So how can I do? You need a, if you see here, you need a URL to clone it, just like how you clone normally. So I would be copying the same URL and then I'll go it. Now I went here, and if you see, notice here there is an option also to define basically your requires authentications. By default, as I told you, there are two types of Git version we have it. If you remember yesterday we have discussed, one is a TFVC, Team Foundation Version Control. Okay, Team Foundation version control is a olden one. It is a heavy one. Normally we don't use it, that one. We mostly use a Git, and we have learned Git as well, right? So this is a thing. So every company they'll be using this only, Git, as a repository type. Now URL I have copied, and automatically as you type the URL, automatically you get a repository name here. That means this repository name, whatever I have it, you will be automatically populated here. Now second thing is here. Now if you see here, if you remember last time, I in fact told you about the password, like authentication, the PAT, personal access token, right? PAT, personal access token. It is a way of authenticating to your repository or resources. Now there are two way I can do it. If I, let's say, if I, this particular Azure DevOps has a my GitHub repository access, in this case, then you do not need this particular authentication level. I can simply click this one and I can import it. But let's say you have some other GitHub which is not having access to your Azure DevOps. Let's say you have a different company or different projects and all. Mostly they will not have access to Azure DevOps and the Azure, GitHub. So in this case, what you have to do is that, let me show you that also. Say for example, I can do this, no issue. This is because I have access to between these two services. Now let me show you this one, how I can get this one. Now if I go here, as I told you, this has to be done PAT from your Azure portal. Sorry, not Azure portal, in Azure DevOps, Azure GitHub, GitHub. Okay. Okay, now let me go here. If I remember, last time we have done, right, under settings in your profile, there is something called as the developer settings, right? If you remember, we have done here, we have gone here, and then there is something called as a PAT, or personal access tokens. I click here. There are two ways again. Two types. One is a fine grained token. This is a preview mode, that means it's still not recommended to use it. Second one, we have a token that is a classic. Let's choose the one which is already being used mostly. I will select the one. As I click here, there is an option called personal access token classic. I have selected, and there is an option called generate new token. As I click here, as I mentioned, there are two types. I'll be selecting the one which is this thing. Now also this is a beta. If you see here, the difference means you can say this is for the general use. If you want to use for the beta types, then you can say fine grain repo scope. That means if you're working with the Azure repos related, or you want to give access to anything related to your Azure repos, then you can select this one. If you select this one, what happens? I will show this also. You will see what kind of things you want. So this again depends on the your requirement to requirement, it may varies. So your choice is up to you. Now in my case, let me go to the repos because mostly we are working with the repos, right? So I can give any name as a repo's name, I mean token name. I can simply repo key. You can give any short name or a long name, no problem. It depends on your this thing. Okay. So in my case, I'll give as the Azure repo key for what I said that. That's it. Otherwise, I can give 2025, something like that. Anything name you can give, okay, whatever name you like. Now if you see here, as I told you, this particular Azure DevOps, I mean this particular GitHub is owned by me, so it obviously I'll be the owner, right? Because it is only me right now, owner of this particular repository, I mean GitHub. So that is why my name is coming here. Second thing, you could see the expressions like this particular token can be used how long, whether you want this particular to be customized according to requirement. Let's say we want to just give for temporary 1 day, 2 days, or 7 days, maybe 60 days, 90 days, or you want to set as no expressions. It's all depends on your requirement, how you want that to be defined. In my case, I'll give it as the 7 days. Then always you need to definitely mention description that will help you to understand what is the main purpose using this particular token, right? So anyway, I can give any name. I say in my case this is for a anything I can give. Sorry, my bad. Azure repo, I can simply Azure repo authentication. Authentication. Anything you can give, not an issue. In description name you can give anything. Now is the point here. If you see here, it's as like repository access, whether this particular repository there is an option public repository also you want to give it read only, or there's all repository. That means if you have in this particular your github.com you have multiple repository, right? If you want to give access to all the repository, then you can select this one. That means you don't have to select any repository because this token is created within your profile under GitHub, right? So you don't need to select any subscription, I mean repositories. Say for example, if you see the third option, that is only select repositories. That means if you want to specify only set of repository or maybe only one set of repository, I can define here. Say for example, you can see here, right? Only select repository means you can select whichever we want, right? Like this. Like that you can select if you want to select only specific repository. Otherwise you have to select all repositories. It's again depends on your thing. In my case, what is the repository name we are working on? We are working on the Azure, what is that? Azure DevOps, okay, DevOps Pulse repo, right? So I want to give only this particular repo. So let us see that one. As I told you, I think this we don't need for now. We can leave this one. Here is a thing. Yeah. So I can select my repository, DevOps. If you see here, this is the one, right? Under my username, that is DevOps Pulse repo. So I selected this one. If you see here, this is the repository name, right? We are working with this one. Now, let me then do next. Next, if you see here, if you at all require, there is a different permission also you can give it. Say for example, you want to do repository permissions. Repository permissions permits access to repositories and related resources. So example, if you want to give here, you right now we don't have any access. Say for you want to give some other access to this particular repo for based on this particular token, then you can define it. So you can just have a look once. This all if at all required, then you can give it. Otherwise you can ignore this one like secrets and webbook, git flow, everything. In my case, that's okay, I don't need for now, so I can this thing. Then next is the account permissions. Now if you see account permission, there is an option again. You want to block this thing, view and manage user block by the user, and also copilot chart, email access, events, followers. So you want to create the git SSS key. Basically you just need to explore basically what do you need according to your requirements. You select that one. Okay, this you have to select. So this is the thing. Now I will just select this one. For now I don't need any specific permissions because I just go with the default one. Now, as I told you, whenever you copy this particular token or personal access token, you should not be closing. If you have to copy this somewhere, because once you close this browser, this will be disappear. You will not be able to see second time the same the ID that you need. Okay, I have copied this my case. Then I have this thing. There are two ways to authenticate. If you see here, there is a PAT or the password. If you log in with the username also, like I can mention as Hriyen07, something like that, I can give my GitHub password. This is one way of accessing it. I mean, cloning it. Second, if you don't need that, you can simply use a PAT, a personal access token. I can simply copy paste it. I don't need a username because the username is only for the if you have the password. So I'm using not password, I'm using a PAT, personal access token. So let me select. All right. So if you see here, as soon as I click here, it says now on its way importing this particular repository, that is my repository. We will send you a notification. So if you see here, it is successfully imported now. Congratulations. Like that, they given some this thing. Now, as soon as I see here, now I can see the repo in my this thing also. Repository now. See, I have before also, I have this also now. Okay, this is one of the way of massively using it from GitHub. Okay. Now let's come to the next. I hope this you guys understood. Uh, Now what I'll do, I will try to explain some of the high level what we discussed yesterday so that we can relate now. If you, okay, let me share projects. Okay, you will see so many like this because this is my old projects. Okay, but what we need to understand here is that boards. Yesterday, if you remember, as I told you, we have these are some of the service, right? So we have understood this one, right? Then how the repos works basically. Then we will understand more little in details. Then we have a pipeline, Azure pipeline. What is Azure pipeline used basically as a service here? It's a robust, continuous integration and continuous delivery platform for automating the build, test, and deployment process. That means as a DevOps engineer, what is our major role? To basically, you need to basically automate things and build, test, and deploy, right? So these are the some of the things that we have to as a DevOps engineer we have to do. So with the help of what? With the help of this tool, that is the Azure pipeline. So with Azure pipeline is basically it is also a continuous integration and continuous delivery platform for automating. That means everything as a automate you have to automate everything like a build, test, and deployment. Okay. So let us see that one. We will not do hands-on much now. We will have a section for that to do hands-on. I'm just making sure that you understand the concept first. Now, as I told you, as soon as I click here, let me show you. Let me put cursor here. As you put a cursor, what you see here, you have to put cursor. Even same thing, even if repo, you can check like what all the options are there. Click the cursor over there. Under here we have so many. Then under repo also we have a this all many options are there. Don't worry, we have a class for that. For now, you can just understand what exactly each service does. Okay. Now we have under pipelines. We have pipeline, enrollment, release, everything we have. Let's not go that details. But what is pipeline? As I told you, pipeline basically is nothing but it is a continuous integration and continuous delivery process. I mean, like tools that automates your build, test, and deploy. That means you will build and then test and then deploy. Okay, how is it possible? Okay, now say for example, this is one of the core. If you remember last we have done we have selected repo, right? Repo we have, that means say for example this particular repo sorry, this particular repo I'm using it right now, right? And this particular repo also needs to connect to your basically pipeline so that you can fetch the repository so that you can get a core, right? Whatever core, whether it is infrastructure core or application core, like that. So let me show you that one. If I come here, see here, pipeline. As soon as I click here, new pipeline, where is your code? That means Azure DevOps, that is Azure Pipeline, asking me where my code is, where is my code right now. So as I told you, code can be stored anywhere. If you remember, I told you we can store in GitHub as well as Azure, and there are so many other bit buckets we can use, and we have enterprise version, we have it. So it depends on the projects to projects, but mostly any company you go, you will be using these three. Azure Repo, if you talk about Azure DevOps, mostly it will be Azure Repo, or some situation you may use a GitHub enterprise version or maybe GitHub. But if we talk about the other than Azure Cloud, I mean others, let's AWS case and all, mostly they will go with the Bitbucket. Okay, but Azure related means you mostly be selecting one of them. Azure Repo on this thing. It depends on the project. In my case, as I mentioned, we have stored our application core or maybe any test core in an Azure Repo, right? So I will select this one first. If you see a free private Git repository, pull requests and core source, everything is available. So I will select this one because this is what I want. Now, as I select my source code as Azure repository, now it is asking me select repository, the one which you want. That means I know my code which I cloned just now, right? This is the code that I have cloned from my GitHub, right? So I will select this one. Now, based on once I select this thing, it is asking me now like start pipelines or existing pipeline. Now you can also see there are so many options are there. Configure your pipeline. So based on your existing applications, the pipeline will try to identify the kind of code or maybe that you'll be working. Let's say you're working with .NET based applications, then automatically they will suggest you to define according to the .NET application, the pipeline has to be created. They will give you as a recommendations. But then it is not always you will be using it. You need to do a lot of modifications and also write the code from the scratch also sometime. Not the infra code. I'm talking about the pipeline code. Okay. Now, question is then which one to select now? Okay. For testing, I can simply select the existing if you have it, else I can select the starter. Okay, for now I will go with the starter. Starter, we do not have much thing. Okay. Before that, before understanding the pipeline, I will take you a little bit about the CI/CD. What is CI/CD? So that I can explain you in a way how like it will be easy for you to understand. Okay. Let me take to the points. I will come back others anyway. So if I let me change it. Okay, let me pipelines maybe. Okay. Uh, okay, I think yeah we are here, so that I can explain about this thing. All right. So let's understand this one first. CI/CD process. Okay, let me expand this one. Okay. First of all, as I mentioned, we are talking about Azure pipeline. But before that, we need to understand what is meant by Azure CI/CD pipeline, or maybe CI/CD pipeline, or CI/CD in simple term. CI/CD, I think is mentioned somewhere. Let me check. Okay, I think yeah, it is mentioned here. If you see here, CI/CD, right? It says that CI/CD focus on automating the software build, test, and deploy. That means what they will do, they will build, they have to do automate, you have to automate. First thing is the build, test, and the deployment process. That means these are three things are very key here: build, test, and deployment. But of course there are many other tests are available, but these are the high primary one. Okay, that means these are some of the important one. On the other hand, DevOps is more of a culture that emphasizes collaboration, communication, and integration between development and operation teams. As we all know, DevOps means, right? So that means if you can just take a look here as a diagram, what you see here, this is the development side. Basically, that means Okay, this is development. And then what else we have? This is operations. That means development or developer or development, you can say development team, they would have a more knowledge in the code and application level, right? When it comes to the operation level, they may not have that experience or an expert. So so what is the measure role now? When I say CI/CD, mean what is the measure role here now? In the continuous in the development phase, what development they will do? They will do a plan. Plans, in the sense I have already explained in our last sections. Plan is nothing but based on the requirement, they'll gather everything and plan according to projects. Let's say what is the scope in the projects, whether you have to gather the informations project requirements, and also you have to see the feasibility also, whether it is possible or not. This all will be done in your plan phase. And then code mean based on the plan everything. As I told you, there is something called as in Agile methodology, if you remember, and we have spoken about the there is something, I'm not getting the name now. Okay, anyway, so plan after plan. Okay, so that is a define, correct. Define one. Define, we have it. Define is nothing but basically documenting. Once you have all the plans, we will define it. We'll define it based on the documentation. Defining is nothing but it basically you're documenting everything, that okay, this is the requirement, this is the scope as part of the projects, like that. You everything will be well documented. You have to refer that one, and you have to according to that you will design. Based on the designing, you will build a core. Okay, then you will build a core. Once you build a code, definitely they will be having other decision also. I mean, after a code, they will build it applications. After building it, then they will do a testing. Then only they'll go to the release phase. Then after releasement, again this is a same. When it comes to the operations, again we have what is a work. They will also suppose deploy, again operate, they'll operate, and they'll monitor. These are the lifecycle basic works. Maybe it is still not clear to you, but it's okay. Let me go to the next one. If you notice here, when it comes to the Azure CI/CD pipeline, right? As I mentioned, it is the Azure CI/CD pipeline process. Now implementing build strategy. Now, say for example, if you remember, we are working individually in a local system, right? We are working here. We are working here, right? Now, this particular person is working locally. This is person locally he's working, just like how we are working the BS code, right? Locally where he's working with the through the BS code. If you see here, as I told you, we are working in the BS code now. This particular engineer working, everything is modifying the code, everything in their BS code. Then once it is done, they will push the code to the Azure Repos. That is the again Git version, right? So they will push the code to the here. That is your Azure Repos. Once it is pushed, then what we have it, there's something called as a build and release pipeline. There comes a concept called CI/CD. And when it comes to the CI, continuous integration. CI means continuous integrations. And when it comes to CD, continuous delivery or deployments. Okay. But normally, if somebody asks what is CI/CD mean, I can mention continuous integration and continuous delivery. But sometimes when inside the DevOps, if you talk about, let's say about pipeline, then it will be a continuous integration and continuous deployment. Okay, don't be confused. But normally people ask what is CI/CD, then they can mention continuous integration and continuous delivery. But there is nothing wrong. They are saying that continuous deployment also. It is also still true. Okay, depends on the situations. Okay. Now, fine. Now that means we have done everything. Then let's say now I have deployed this one to where? That is Azure Web App, right? This is one service in your cloud, right? Uh, I think many of you know it is a platform as a service, right? So you don't manage as an infrastructure. You do not manage this one. Everything will be managed by who? It will be managed by Azure only. So you don't manage this thing. This is as a managed service, or I can call as a platform as a service, where you do not have much control over your infrastructure level. But then, if any piece of code that you want to deploy or maybe use it, yes, you can use this one, because as a platform they have given you, users need to get your code ready and deploy it. That's it. Everything will be managed or maybe by the cloud itself. In our case, it is Azure one. Now then, once you deploy this thing, you would be basically, after deploying, you need to basically you have to monitor also this application, right? You have to monitor. There are different types of monitor we have. It, say for example, we had an application insights, and then we have Azure monitor, and then we have a log analytics, right? These are all monitoring tools, guys. uh, I will explain later when it comes to that point. For now, just understand these are monitoring tools. Say for example, this particular application, for any reason having any sort of issue, say for traffic spikes, or maybe sometime it is not functioning as expected, there could be any many reason, right? That time this monitoring tool can help you to identify where the issue is. Okay, this is the simple basically definitions when it comes to the CI/CD process. So now, as I told you, then what is our Azure pipeline? So as I told you already, Azure pipeline basically it automates building, testing, and deployment application for efficient and reliable software development with a focus on continuous integration deployment. That means with the help of CI/CD pipelines, what I can do is, being as a DevOps engineer, you simply do a test code in your locally, you modify the code. Once it is tested locally, then you can deploy with the help of, that is what I call CI/CD pipeline. Okay. Okay. Then next we have, that is continuous integration. As I told you, nothing but it is a automatically build and test code and creates deployable artifacts, and then we have it continuous delivery automate. Here we have like automatically deploy to environment or end users. So this is the thing. Yeah, so anyway, for now just understand this much continuous integration. Anyway, when we are doing in this thing, that time we will explain more in details, but for now we'll just understand the service level first. Okay. Okay, so we have understood this one, how this one basically for Azure Repo, as I mentioned, it basically way of storing your code. Basically, it is a centralized repository within your Azure DevOps where you can store your code and you can track, you can collaborate within the team members. Okay, just like a GitHub. But this particular service only works within your Azure DevOps. This is the integrated one already between your Azure DevOps. When it comes to the GitHub, it is not like this thing. This is an open source cloud. It is a cloud based basically platform. That means everything is managed by cloud only. Okay, so as I told you, pipeline is nothing but it is a basically tool that can automate continuous integration, that can automate build, test, and deployment. And then we have Azure Boards. Azure Boards is nothing but a work tracking system for planning, okay, tracking, discussion, work across the entire development team. So that means, now let me show you. This is the one. This one I will show you later. Don't worry, this pipeline, because I just given you overview how to this thing. This is the one I was telling. Where is that? Azure Boards. Here. Okay, boards. Okay, in the Azure Boards, if you see here, as I told you, there is a work item we have. There is a bug. There is a epic. There is a features. There is a issue, task, and so on. Right. So this is the work item basically for your Agile methodology. Now, when it comes to the document, like here, it says the definition, a work tracking. It is a work tracking system. It is a tracking system for planning. Okay, for planning, you can plan, you can track, you can discuss work uh, across the entire team development. That means, say for example, Say for example, let me share like, okay, I think I can select anyway. Okay, now if you see here, this is my one of the applications. Let's say this is a Epic. Epic again, what did I say yesterday? Epic is nothing but it is a high level of your this thing projects. Let's say you have to deploy particular requirement, but if I talk this thing, you can check maybe what is Epic. Maybe it'll be easy for you to understand in Agile. It is a large body of work that broken down into smaller. Okay. In Agile, an epic is a large body of work that's broken down into smaller user stories. So as I told you, it is a large body of your work. Large body is nothing but what it means basically. Let me show you. This is a, so say for example, the simplest way, there is a requirement about the e-commerce website I want to create, right? This is a basically large body because this is the requirement. I want to create an e-commerce website. Now, under this thing, what I have to do is that this is the epic. Then I have to select the which projects and which iterations. Anyway, that you will learn that later. For now, just understand epic means it is a large body of your project. So then next we have it. Where is that? Then we have it next is your bugs. Bugs mean as name suggests, right? If there is any issue in the bugs or you have to fix that one for any reason, right? You have to define this one. You have to create the bugs based on the issue. And then we have a features. Feature, as we all know, let's say you have created certain resources. As part of the resource, you need to define some of the other what do you call features you want to edit. In this case, you can select this one. And issue means if there is any issue, you can raise a issue also. And the task I mean depends on the features or maybe depends on the what is a user story. You will be creating a task. Task is nothing but for specific role, specific action that to be done or created that to be completed by you basically as a this thing individual. Okay, that means I have given you this task, you need to complete this and this date like that. Okay, so then we have a test cases. Test cases mean normally for every single release, we need to basically do a test, right? Let's say application test or performance test or maybe load test. There are different kind of test cases. So this all normally will be done by the what do you call that test engineer or test QA person also. So depends on the project again. Okay, and then they can create that one. And user story is something that you have to take care because user story is nothing but it basically you need to based on the requirement you need to give a proper understandings or maybe requirement for the project. That means if you're creating a project, if you just see here, if you're creating let me see one just epic. Okay, yeah, if you see this is one of the use case. This is user story. Say for example user story means you need to mention everything. This is the simplest way you can understand. As a user, I want to see a dashboard so that I can see all the latest products. So this is a proper requirement, right? So in this case, it is the this is how the requirement comes means this is user story. That means you are mentioning as a user what is your expected or what is your expectation here in order to basically complete a task or maybe to do it right. So this is why you have to mention here, and also at the same time you will be basically what happened. I maybe let me refresh. Let me go back. Here, right? Okay, this is the thing you need to define. Now here, for every single basically task, whatever I mean, the story you define, you need to define here what is the exactly requirements and everything. We need to define as a user story. You need to mention here step by step. Okay. Then once they have it, there is something called as a product owner, right? Product owner work is to basically identify the requirements, and then also the same time stakeholders and the product owner they mostly be connecting together, including some case even project manager as well. It depends again. So product owner or maybe product mostly be called as a product owner. and or business analysis, we can call it. Okay, along with your stakeholders, everything, if you mention everything in details, your step by step requirements, everything, then they'll have a separate call. They will connect each other and understand the kind of whatever you mentioned here, whether is this possible to do it or not. If possible, how long it is going to take, everything, even what could be the challenges. So every single steps situation wise, it will be discussed, and based on that, if something is not feasible, somebody is not able to do it or deliver on time, or maybe for any reason, one on the other side, that time then they have to take a call again. Okay, this is the thing we need to basically do it here. In my case, as I told you, uh, maybe let me see this one, if I have something here. I created somewhere. Okay, I do not know where I create. This is okay. This was resolving with that is not fine anyway. Okay, so you will get everything created like this, so that you will have a proper understanding. Okay, this is the requirement, I need to explain same thing to the respective person. Okay, so here, who all will be involved in this one? While we have this kind of, even developer will be connecting, because developer, the person, anything that they need more information or insights, they can basically answer at the time of meeting. Okay, then also your product manager or product owner or business analysis, then stakeholders, everybody will be sitting together and discussing about this progress, or maybe challenges, or maybe everything. Okay, right. Now let's go to the next one. As I told you, this all we don't do that. It will be done mostly by the QA test. Task mean, as I told you, if you see the task here, let me select here uh, Agile. I can select a task. Say for example, task. This is a task. Task mean as name suggests, right? Basically, they are giving you some task to do it or to complete it. As simple. So, but within a task, let's say the monitoring user login related something task I want to create. Now, within a task, basically, this is the where, I mean, this is where you will actually define the steps it has to be performed. Meaning, in order to complete your task, right? Task means it is a certain action that you need to complete or to do something, right? That means for to do this thing, you need a prerequisites, right? That means that means every single steps or maybe requirement, according to the requirement, steps will be given. Let's say first, let's say they can mention like number one, it has to be, let's say number one, complete a, then in the second step, then complete, then say complete B, something like that. Just giving an example. That means whatever task is there to perform this, there could be some challenges also, right? So every single, that is why we have to go with some in here. Normally in some project, if it is a big task, something it is very new to you or maybe team, or maybe it is difficult to remember also. In this case, what they do is that they will mention all the steps or maybe this thing here, so that anybody they want to, whenever they want, they can go through this one and understand what are there to be done here. Okay, this is the thing. Okay, next, anyway, I think we are going, okay, I'll say close this thing. Then we have it, boards artifacts. Artifact is nothing but it is a package management system for managing dependencies and artifacts used in deployment. Now, if you see the artifacts, here the thing, right? Artifacts. Now we do not have any artifacts. This also we can use it if you want to. Artifacts is nothing but you have a output of your builds. In the sense, whenever you build applications, right? Whenever you build applications or your code, everything, your code will be published somewhere in your repository, everything. Now you want basically the artifacts also be published here. Or let's say you have a dependency file to run your .NET based applications. That means, as you know, before having the dependency file, you cannot run the applications, or maybe certain required tools to be installed in order to use certain applications, right? So in order to make this all available in one place, in simple terms, we can use artifacts. Okay, so that is the thing. Now, but when it comes to the Azure Artifacts, first we have something like we need to connect to the feed and create a feeds, and we have the source upstream. So we have so many options. So if I see here, there is a many things. If I show you, one of them I created. Now, if you want to connect to this thing, once you create a feed, you can connect to the feed. First, you need to create a feed, then connect to the feed. Create a feed. Let me show you how it works. If you create a feed, it is going to come. You can give a feed name, and also, as I told you, the scope. Scope can be two-way. Whether this particular dependency file for particular .NET based applications, you want them to be only particular projects, or maybe within the entire organizations. Organization means within the organizations, as we all know, many projects, right? That means that many projects can be used this artifacts. Or if you do not want this one, then you cannot use. But one thing, if you notice again here, it says that the by default
I
it is a
think your
public.
voice is
This
breaking.
is it
Is
okay?
it for
Yeah, for
Is
me
it
as well
is it
sometimes.
okay? Is it okay? Anyway, we'll try it maybe next 5 minutes. Is it too much? Let me know. Okay. Okay, so yeah, this is a public this thing. You can see this feed is being created public project and will be accessible by everyone on the internet. To create a private feed, start with a private project. That means if you want to create this one as a private means only the limited person or team members would have access to this feed. That means if you're creating any project that is public, right? When you create a project, then in this case we have even a private project means even we can also use this as a private. But if you private project is as a public, then you have to make this also by default as a public. This is why it is coming by default public now, because our project is public now. Okay, and scope means in order to use this particular feed can be organizations. But if you notice again here, right now only the scope level is a project level, nor in the organization level. This feed cannot be scope to the entire organizations. To create private feed with the organization scope, start with a private project. Question is why it is so? Because as I mentioned, private project is something within the limited team members or maybe certain person would have access, right? So in order to avoid this kind of security risk, this is why this Microsoft was telling that if you want to use organization level means your project must be private. If you want organization level, it will be a private project. Simple. If you want public, this is the by default. Then you can only use the project level. If you want organization level, then it should be private project. Okay. Now, anyway, I don't want to create. It is already done. So I have created already. Maybe I can just feed. If you see here, there is an option called connect to feed. You can connect it. Like you can select connect to with .NET. If as I told you, .NET we have it, and then Visual Studio, NPM, map bands, Python. There are so many other things are there. So whichever you want, if you want to connect, then you need to configure this. All need to be configured here. Normally we don't use mass artifacts because we have their separate artifacts repository also in some case. But yeah, but your major work would be pipeline, as I told you, and even tests also you will not do much here because tests, as I told you, it will be done by the QA or anything like that. Okay.